From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Here's today's lineup. K-State's Lavell, Winsor, and Reid join us to preview two K-State informational webinars taking place tonight and tomorrow, centering on farm financial and management issues associated with the COVID-19 outbreak. They'll outline the open forum format that will highlight these sessions and tell how any farm family member can participate. Then the latest edition of FSA Coffee Talk. From the Farm Service Agency, Carla Wicoff reports on several Conservation Reserve Program matters of interest. And later, back in for his weekly visit, K-State's Charlie Lee, covering a new report evaluating one method of contending with feral cat problems. All this and more next on Agriculture Today.
Make hand washing a healthy habit everywhere you go. Wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, especially after going to the bathroom, before, during, and after preparing food, and before eating. If soap and water aren't available, use a hand sanitizer that has at least 60% alcohol. Life is better with clean hands. A message from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
You're tuned in to Agriculture Today. As always, thanks for being along with us. Well, the Agricultural Economics Department at Kansas State University is offering up another informational opportunity quite unique to the times, taking place this evening and then tomorrow afternoon. And this will be what's deemed a follow-up to the Farm Financial Skills for Kansas Women in Agriculture sessions, which took place this past winter. Joining us once again, two of those who were deeply involved in those previous programs, Reid and Lavell Winsor of K-State Agricultural Economics. There are unique concerns amid the COVID-19 situation, Robin, which has basically prompted these two sessions, correct?
Yeah, when we did our series this winter, we've been in a down economy for a number of years now. So I hate to say that was normal times when we were doing our series this winter, but nobody saw something like this coming. So what we want to do is reach back out to the participants in our series and anyone across Kansas and just kind of help evaluate what do you do with your farm financial management during these times that unprecedented stress, everything going on, just helping to shed some light on the big issues going on in the ag industry that are affecting the farm level and how we can help people work through those management decisions.
And something you mentioned just a bit ago, one does not have to have participated in the original series to take in these two webinars coming up later tonight and tomorrow, correct?
Absolutely. So we had about 685 participants across the state that took part in our winter series. We want this open to anybody because even if you didn't hear that material that we taught this winter, these are good things to think about for any farm manager.
And in fact, we will, of course, pass along registration details in just a second. Lavell, you might quickly, if you would, recap that winter series and some of the main points that were conveyed to the participants in the original series, from which tonight and tomorrow's programs would be built.
Yes. So what we did is we did a 4-part financial series during January and February. And that series was focused on farm financials, record keeping, balance sheets, income statements, and cash flows. How that happened is there were 32 locations across the state where the 685 participants gathered at each of those locations in small groups. And Robin and I presented financial material from the campus that each location had access to. Then they did a local activity to reinforce the concept. And then they had local speakers that talked about mental health and family living expenses. So since the lion's share of that program really was focused on financials, we wanted to regroup with all of the things that are happening right now with COVID-19 and hopefully give them some additional ideas, as well as reach out to other folks who would like to hear this information as well.
Well, Robin, some of these stated topics within this, it starts with what's going on in the agricultural markets, and you and Lavell will hopefully speak to that.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of uncertainty out there. Markets are moving quite quickly. A lot of fluctuation is going on. So we want to talk about some of the factors that are affecting the crops and livestock markets. Another hot topic right now is the financial assistance under the CARES package that was just passed. So there's $9.5 billion that was earmarked for agriculture and how that might be allocated. Another thing that we're going to cover is how do you adjust your long-term farm plan, or do you adjust your long-term farm plan based on this new time that we're in, the new information that we have? And so Lavell is actually going to speak to that on a farm level. What do you do with your financial management decisions?
Lavell, bring you back in to speak to that very point. What are some of the things that farm families could be considering now in as far as amending their finances, their management, trying to weather these current circumstances?
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit broadly on one hand about how your plan for your farm and what you should look at, or should you be maybe taking some small steps one way or the other with things, but then also some practical things that you may want to evaluate, such as your marketing plans and some other things along interest rates, maybe look at some refinancing with interest rates moving a little lower and things along those lines, but hopefully some practical things that you can actually look at and just talk among the business partners involved and along with your key advisors that you have on your farm to see if you should be taking some steps. You know, none of us know exactly what's going to happen with this situation. It's unprecedented, but hopefully give you a few things that you can look at on your farm level.
Now, you have a third party joining the two of you to lead these sessions, and that would be Rebecca McFarland, who is the District Family and Consumer Sciences Agent in the Frontier District, East Central Kansas, and she will be talking about coping with stress. Robin, you don't want to paraphrase necessarily what Rebecca is going to be sharing, but you might give us an idea of what she's intending to do with that part of the program.
Absolutely, Eric. And this was a topic that we had on our winter series as far as, stress around farm financials and just the inherent nature of the business that we're in and a lot of things out of your control. But this is really a whole new level of stress. And we really asked her to focus on, she was a farm wife going through the 1980s. And, she remembers the crisis back then, raising her children during that time. She's coming on the webinar and give us an idea of some ways to cope with that stress and how you talk to your children about what's going on right now. And just from a farm wife perspective, help others relate to what they're going through right now.
And it couldn't be a more pertinent thing to address. A major part of all of this, of course, would be the opportunity for participants to interact with the three of you and create a dialogue over what's going on out there. That will be certainly highlighted within this program. Lavell?
Yes, absolutely. The main thing that we will emphasize is not only can they reach out to resources, that there's resources available through campus, but also in their local communities through extension as well. And all of those are important, especially in the midst of these types of unprecedented times.
So it's a well-rounded program, hopefully will allow for exchange of thoughts on things that are so critical at this point in time. So as far as participating, Robin, there is no fee involved in this, correct?
Absolutely. We wanted this to be available to anybody who wanted to connect. When we did our winter series, they had to go to a local location to connect to it. Obviously, we can't do that anymore. So you're connecting from your own home, wherever you are across the state, you can connect. But we do ask you have to register ahead of time. With a lot of security issues with Zoom that we've been using now, we want to make sure everybody is registered. You have a unique link to get into Zoom. Is the technology we're using. So please don't wait until right before the webinar to do that. Try to register ahead of time so you have everything you need to get in as soon as we start. And I will mention too, when you register, we have a box that you can type a question in for us. During the webinar, we'll be taking questions, but if you want to submit those ahead of time, we can make sure to address the concerns that are out there.
Excellent. And again, these will take place tonight, 7 to 8 o'clock online, and then tomorrow afternoon from 1:30 to 2:30. Is it the same program both days? Is that correct?
Yes, the same program will be offered twice just to help everybody that has a crazy schedule, as I'm sure we all do, that if you want to do it in the evening or the next day, both programs will be the exact same.
All right. And again, as we close out here, Lavell, this is a pretty important opportunity for those who have questions about making it through the current strife that's associated with COVID-19 on the farm or ranch. A perfect way to get their questions answered.
Yes, it is. And the whole idea is that we want to be able to hopefully help you, provide you with some framework for how you might be able to make some of these decisions, understand some of the resources that might be available. And the other thing that I would like to add is this series was originally geared towards women, but we do want to encourage that this would be important for any family member, any farm family member to listen in on and hopefully gather some ideas of what you guys can be doing to make decisions going forward.
Very good. Well, once again, you can find out all of the details on agmanager.info. This is being billed as a follow-up to Farm Financial Skills for Kansas Women in Agriculture. That was a series that took place over the winter, but this expressly addressing concerns amid COVID-19 as they would apply to farm and ranch life and management. And we appreciate the both of you sharing a few moments with us. Thanks, Lavell and Robin, and best of luck with this program tonight and tomorrow as well.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Joining us there from K-State Agricultural Economics, Robin Reid and Lavell Winsor. Again, register as soon as you can at agmanager.info for one of these two sessions. The first this evening at 7 o'clock, the second 1:30 tomorrow afternoon via Zoom. All the details at agmanager.info. We'll be back with more after this. You're listening to Agriculture Today.
Burning prairie grass is essential for Flint Hills ranchers. Following grazing and burning best practices can ensure that the prairie remains intact while not smoking out downwind neighbors. The Kansas Flint Hills Smoke Management Plan helps guide prescribed burning on prairie land. To learn more, visit www.ksfire.org. Again, that's www.ksfire.org.
Welcome back to Agriculture Today and our regular segment featuring folk from the Farm Service Agency, state headquarters for Kansas here in Manhattan. It's our FSA Coffee Talk every other week, and we've quite a handful of Conservation Reserve Program details to share with you today. Along with us from the FSA State Office is Carla Wicoff, Chief Program Specialist there. Well, Carla, interesting times before we get started here, and you and your fellow staff members at the Farm Service Agency are still cranking away implementing and administering programs. So different times, but the work is still there.
Right. Thank you for having me today. And yes, we're working hard to keep things rolling with the FSA office, and all the offices out in the counties are also working to keep going and serving the producers in the field and keep the programs going. Right off the start, I'd like to visit a little bit about the CRP grassland sign-up that we are in the process of right now. The sign-up for that program began March 16th, and it ends May 15th of this year. What that program is it allows participants that protect grasslands and rangelands while being able to work the grazing lands. So this is a program that deals with grasslands, vegetative cover that's already established, either introduced or native, grasses or legumes. It's a 10 or 15-year contract, so a little bit different than the regular CRP program where you could pick a year in between that. This program, you have the option of picking a 10-year contract or a 15-year contract.
And the rental payments for this form of CRP are established in advance, aren't they?
Right. They're established for this program, and they're based on pasture rents throughout the different counties in the state, and it ranges anywhere. The annual rental payments range anywhere from a low of $7 an acre, just as an example, in Seward County, and up to a $30 per acre rate in Doniphan County. So opposite ends of the state, little different rental rates for each one of those, but each county has their own set rate. So visit your county office if you want to get more information on that.
And the FSA will provide cost share for this program.
Right. It's set up much in the same manner as the general and continuous CRP, in the manner that it pays 50% of establishing. The difference here is the grassland program, you already have the vegetative cover. That's a requirement in the program. But there are options for different practices to help you in your grazing program for this practice, and they'll help cost share the 50% on permanent fences, ponds, wells, water facilities, and even prescribed burning. So that's a help within this program.
So after one signs up for this grassland CRP, what are the steps following to assess that application and determine whether or not it's to be approved?
What they do is, once the sign-up is complete, then all those offers are submitted into the national office, and they evaluate and rank them at the national level. And they look at current and future use of the ground. They look at environmental factors of the land that's being offered. They look at maximizing the grassland protection. They look at the cost of what it's going to cost to put that in, and then they also look at the type of cover that's already out there as some of the items that they look at. Once again, visit your county office. Well, I guess you can't visit the office. That's not the right term right now, is it?
Right.
So call your county office, and they can set up an appointment and visit with you about how to move forward with an offer for that sign-up. And like I said, it ends on May 15th, so we have a little bit of time, but if you're interested, you might visit your office.
Better sooner than later, for that date will creep up very rapidly, and the folks there at your local FSA Service Center via phone can walk you through the mechanics of applying for CRP grassland. You now have the final list of accepted CRP offers from that general sign-up, which concluded February the 28th, and you might tell us about that, Carla.
Right. We're excited. We got the accepted list for CRP, and Kansas fared pretty well. We had just under 474,000 acres that were offered in that sign-up that we had that ended on February 28th, and just over 460,000 acres were accepted. So we fared pretty well in Kansas, and so we're going to have a lot of acreage. You know, a lot of that is re-enrolled acreage, but there's some new land that's involved in that too. But just to let counties know the next process that we go through for those accepted acreages, counties have gone through and sent letters notifying producers of their acceptance or rejection of those offers. So those letters should be coming to you. If you don't already have them, they should be out there very soon. Something producers need to be aware of within that letter, it tells you that if you want to continue that offer, if you want to keep going with the process and getting that to a CRP contract, you have 30 days from that date on that letter to tell the office that you want to continue it. And then with that process, the CRP participant then will start working with NRCS to develop a conservation plan. That is something that has to be done before the county office can move forward with the CRP contract to approve it and move forward with that. So once again, contact your local office, and they'll help you out with any questions or concerns that you have with that sign-up. But, yeah, it's great. We had a great turnout for that sign-up, and something I might just mention just a little bit, we do have continuous CRP that's an ongoing sign-up. So if you have any ground that you might be interested in, these are usually smaller acreages like filter strips and smaller acreage practices that are available on a continuous basis.
Don't overlook that continuous CRP availability, but again, great news in the high percentage of success in securing those acres that were applied for into the latest general CRP sign-up. There's one further footnote, and it's a unique situation, as everything related to COVID-19 would be, Carla. There is now encouragement to CRP participants in as far as their managed prescribed burns for CRP acreage, which are part of the number of contracts out there. But because of COVID-19, there has been, well, to put it this way, a tweaking of the CRP ground rules.
Right. The Kansas Department of Health and Environment and the Kansas Department of Agriculture are strongly encouraging producers to voluntarily reduce the number of acres that they intend to burn this spring. So in support of them, FSA and NRCS are working together to help producers. Maybe if they have a management practice that's supposed to be done this year, it's been planned in their conservation plan of operation, those producers can visit once again, I said visit, call your county office and visit with them about possibly either delaying your schedule management practice, and there's certain rules that follow that. So that's the reason there's another option that if you're at the end of the period, the latest time that you can do that, then you also may have an opportunity to choose an alternative type of management practice for this year. But FSA and NRCS will be glad to work with you, producers, and help them either choose another one or delay that burn in support of the recommendation that we've gotten here in Kansas.
And you add that there is an option for changing that management plan away from a prescribed burn this year anyway to a grazing practice. You might expand on that.
Right. There are certain practices in CRP that with the new Farm Bill, the 2018 Farm Bill, there may be an opportunity to do a managed grazing practice. Now, the difference from the past on that is, well, for one thing, they've added the CP25, the rare and declining habitat practice, which we've wanted for many years to be able to graze, and so they've added that to this Farm Bill and allowing that. So that's possibly one of the practices that would be eligible for that. But the other thing on top of that the 2018 Farm Bill added was that you can do that managed grazing if it's planned and it's needed in your conservation plan of operations. You don't have to pay any reduction in your annual rental payment in order to do that managed grazing on your CRP contract. So once again, call your local office and check in with them and see what's available for you if you decide to go along with the recommendation that the KDHE and the Kansas Department of Ag have recommended for burning this year.
Very well. And, of course, have a conversation from a distance with your local FSA personnel on anything to do with these Conservation Reserve Program matters. Carla, the best to you and the staff in forging ahead. Thank you for bringing this all to our attention today, and we will catch up with you again quite soon.
All right. Thank you, Eric.
She's Carla Wicoff, Chief Program Specialist with the Farm Service Agency State Headquarters for Kansas, with a rundown on what's been happening in the CRP world and with the FSA of late. That's the latest FSA Coffee Talk here on Agriculture Today. Now we'll step aside for these next few minutes. When we return, today's agricultural news headlines for you. Also ahead, this week's edition of Milk Lines with K-State's Mike Brook, as well as this week's chat with K-State's Charlie Lee on wildlife management. So stay with us, won't you, here on the K-State Radio Network.
Social distancing slows the spread of coronavirus, so we should all stay home to lower the risk for everyone. More info at coronavirus.gov. Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Broadcasting from the campus of Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. And briefly now, today's top stories in agricultural news for you, courtesy in part of DTN. This week's crop progress and condition report from the USDA for the state of Kansas reads like this. Topsoil moisture supplies around the state are at 9% surplus, 70% adequate, and 21% short to very short as of this past weekend. Subsoil moisture at 7% surplus, 75% adequate, and 18% short to very short. The state of the winter wheat crop in Kansas, 49%, still good to excellent, 38% fair, and 13% poor to very poor. Winter wheat now reaching the jointing stage at 20%. That's well ahead of the 8% last year at this time. And corn planting officially underway, 1% of the crop in the ground. The average for the 5 years past, about 4% corn planted as of this date. Nationally, winter wheat rated 62% in good to excellent condition. According to the USDA, 9% of the crop was rated poor to very poor, and the good to excellent rating in the state of Oklahoma, by the way, is at 73% this week. Coronavirus cases are increasingly affecting the meat packing industry, as both a beef and pork plant in Iowa are now closed this week because of positive cases. Tyson Foods announced a pork processing plant is suspending operations at an eastern Iowa plant after 24 positive cases were tied to its workforce. National Beef also announced it was moving up a major cleaning process at its Iowa premium beef plant in Tama, Iowa, after a worker there tested positive. And at least 13 workers at the packing plant for JBS in Grand Island, Nebraska have tested positive. That plant employs about 3,000 people. Yesterday, Tyson said it was suspending pork production in Columbus Junction, Iowa, due to those positive cases involving more than 24 workers. Tyson said it was diverting swine normally processed at that plant to other pork processing plants in the region. And Tyson added the company is taking temperatures of all workers at processing plants before they enter company facilities. The company has also stepped up its deep cleaning and sanitizing of its facilities, according to Tyson Foods CEO Noel White. To boost that cleaning process, White said the additional cleaning will sometimes require suspending at least 1 day of production. An employee at National Beef in Iowa tested positive on Thursday of last week. In response, it has announced it would move up its regular plant cleaning to this week. That plant's processing being adjusted. National Beef is continuing to pay the 850 or so employees that work at Tama. Coming your way next, this week's edition of Milk Lines. Here's K-State dairy specialist Mike Brook. Mike?
Today I want to visit with our Kansas dairy farmers concerning some things you might want to consider as we go through the next few weeks, maybe even a couple of months as we deal with the COVID-19 virus. I think it's really important on our dairy farms and other animal operations that we start limiting our travel away from the unit, particularly for key members of our management team, as well as any of our other workers, and making sure that we're practicing social distancing as much as we can as we perform our jobs around the dairy. Some other things that you might want to think about is many of the people that normally visit the farm, such as nutritionists and maybe in some cases other folks that are just visiting for sales calls or other things, have probably already limited that exposure on your farm. But if not, make sure you get that limited down to just who actually needs to be on the farm to perform specific jobs. And if it's just to check on things, then maybe that could wait until we get through this. Also want to make sure that you continue to be attentive to symptoms that your employees might be showing. If you see someone that's starting to show some symptoms, make sure that you get them checked out as soon as possible. And if someone does show up positive that has been working on your farm, making sure that you sanitize areas where everybody might have been, things like your break rooms, your bathrooms, those sorts of things. Make sure you get that cleaned up. And actually, during this time, probably wouldn't be a bad idea to daily sanitize those areas. Or if you have time and you have somebody that can do it, maybe like the break room every time after people meet in there for lunch or whatever, make sure that you get that cleaned up. Probably using that break room as little as possible would be another recommendation. People can take their lunch breaks outside away from each other. Might be a good idea to do that as well. The other thing that you need to be aware of is that Many people will likely develop mild cases from the virus. However, that will impact their ability to work. They may not reach the symptoms that are necessary for testing, so you may have to work with some of your employees as they, if they are exposed and do come down with the virus. Again, they may not meet the criteria for testing, but that does not mean that they're not sick. Some other things that you might consider, there have been a lot of folks laid off from at least temporarily or maybe permanently from other jobs. So there may be some labor available in your area. So if your dairy is hit with a situation where you have employees that are off because they're sick, there may be a supply of labor out there in your community that you haven't had in recent years. So advertising and trying to line some of that up ahead of time might be important. So temporary workers may be needed. So you might want to start planning for that, what jobs they'd be able to do, how you would utilize the rest of your staff to fill in areas where they couldn't, and make sure that you have all the essential jobs on the dairy covered. So again, hopefully, if you do get hit, it'll only be for a few weeks. So maybe there's some things that can be put off during those weeks and done at a later time to allow your workers that are still able to come to work, and maybe some temporary workers to get the work done on the dairy that absolutely has to be done every day. This is Mike Brook with K-State Research and Extension, encouraging our dairy farmers to, particularly our management teams, to plan ahead for what may be to come in the next few weeks so that we can keep our dairy farms operating and continue to provide excellent care for the dairy animals on our farms.
Good message for all of the farming community, actually, there, Mike. Many thanks. You're listening to Agriculture Today.
Have you ever thought about where your food comes from? If you're thinking the grocery store, think again. Facts show that the American farmer feeds more than 129 people.
They are continually increasing and improving their operations. A wide variety of crops and livestock are grown in Kansas as well as the United States, providing food to your dinner plate.
Next time you see a farmer or rancher, thank them. For more information, contact K-State Research and Extension.
You're tuned in to Agriculture Today. Coming your way next, our weekly segment on wildlife management. Standing by is wildlife specialist Charlie Lee of K-State Research and Extension. Going to take up the topic once more, Charlie, of feral cats. We have visited before about the issues they create, and this is about managing the feral cat population, a procedure that's called trap, neuter, and release.
Well, as we've discussed before, the number of feral and abandoned cats in the United States continues to increase. Thus, folks are interested in trying to address these impacts caused by cats and looking at animal welfare concerns and either lethal or non-lethal control methods. Gaining in popularity is the trap, neuter, and release strategy for feral cat management. Using that strategy, they try to reduce feral cat populations without euthanizing feral cats. So typically the cats are live trapped, taken to a nearby veterinarian, where the cats are then neutered and spayed or sometimes vaccinated for rabies. Then they're released back into the area where they were trapped. Oftentimes, those cats then are fostered by having caretakers supplemental feed them in those areas. Because those sterilized cats can no longer reproduce, the assumption is that over time, the numbers of feral cats in that colony will decline, and eventually the colony will cease to exist.
Is this practice employed widely out there?
It's getting to be more and more popular, and I'm not really sure why. I think probably animal welfare is playing a role. There are more people interested in trying to care for these cats that are feral. They're making their opinions known to public land managers, health officials, and it's largely fostered by private citizens that think we should be caring for these feral cats And at the same time, they're also aware the population is increasing and are looking at ways to keep that population somewhat in check.
Now, you remind us that there's been a pretty heavy load of research on feral cats and the potential for managing or controlling them over the years. You say that there's new information out from the University of Florida which reviewed all of that information.
Yes, they just in March released a fact sheet discussing trap, neuter, and release, looking at studies that claim that trap, neuter, and release does not reduce cat populations, looking at other studies that claim that trap, neuter, and release does reduce cat populations. They articulate some of the problems that we've discussed before about the risk of transmitting diseases from cats to humans or to wildlife, and then finish with a conclusion.
And again, scores of studies were examined here. This is not a small sampling, is it?
Certainly a lot of literature was reviewed. They looked at the best evidence available and then rendered their conclusion. When they looked at the information about that it does not reduce cat populations, there are some studies from Florida. Some are smaller cat colonies. Others are much larger. They also looked at information from San Diego, California. They found that trap, neuter, and release did not reduce the feral cat population growth rate or the proportion of pregnant feral cats. When they've looked at population growth models, they found that for a trap, neuter, and release colony to decline over time, that you had to have 71 to 94% of the cats need to be neutered. They think that the population sizes increase in these colonies primarily because immigration of other cats and the difficulty of trapping all cats and neutering all of them.
Presumably, then, the disease problem is not being successfully addressed through this protocol either.
Well, if you look at just the rabies concern, typically rabies would be treated with an initial vaccine, then a booster, and then subsequent boosters in years succeeding the initial treatment. Most of these would have only been treated one time, so that does not indicate that they're going to have lifelong immunity to rabies. There's seldom other diseases that are vaccinated for, but they can be, but due to cost are typically not. Fleas, ticks, and mites. There's cat scratch fever. It's caused by a bacteria. There's flea-borne typhus. Plague is also involved. Then there is roundworm eggs and hookworm larvae that are deposited by feral cats. Those have been linked to the deaths of sea otters, and feline leukemia virus has been linked to the death of at least 5 endangered Florida panthers, and infections have been diagnosed in 6 additional Florida panthers since 2010. Those infections are believed to have been transferred to the panthers from cats. So they think that these feral cat colonies are reservoirs for diseases because of high rates of immigration from other cats, and that all of those cats that move into the area don't have vaccinations and are, as the number of animals increase, the risk of disease transmission also increases.
So as this research team looked at this procedure, looked at the studies behind it, came to its conclusions, did it make any recommendations on what can be done to address feral cat problems?
Yeah, they make some commentary after the summary. They understand there's no easy solution to the feral cat population problem, but they hope that more funding is directed towards prevention. Keeping cats indoors and sterilizing them is not cruel. It helps keep those cats safe from disease and injury, allows them to live longer. They also suggest that people not feed outdoor cats, but rather help them get adopted. If you really care about the welfare of cats, then you support funding for local animal shelters and increase public education for the adoption of cats. Euthanizing sick, injured, and unadoptable cats may be the only solution where adoption rates are low.
Well, these were findings out of a recent review by University of Florida scientists on this process that's called trap, neuter, and release as an option for dealing with feral cat matters. Charlie, thanks for going over this with us. Charlie Lee is a wildlife specialist with K-State Research and Extension. And that's our time for today. Thanks for tuning in. Eric Atkinson for Agriculture Today over this, the K-State Radio Network.